On this episode of the magazine, where to go to view Marlborough's natural surroundings, a look at Marlborough's most wanted invasive species, and the answer to where your trash goes. All this right now. Hello and welcome to the magazine. I'm Brian Sullivan, filling in for this episode. First, let's take a walk down the Assabet River Rail Trail where Melanie Francis tells us what we can enjoy.
Looking for a place to get active? Why not take a walk, run, bike, or blade along the scenic Assabet River Rail Trail? The trail offers the opportunity for hikers, bikers, and other users to experience many natural resources along the 12.5-mile trail as it passes through 5 towns. The trail runs through the towns of Marlborough, Hudson, Stowe, Maynard, and Acton. It follows the abandoned MBTA railbed, much of which runs parallel to the Assabet River. From one end to the other, the trail follows the former ROW, the old Marlborough branch, which went out of service in 1973. As an abandoned railroad bed, the entire ARRT rail line is a human-altered feature of the landscape. You can also see some remaining segments of the steel track and railroad ties. The vision for the 12-mile linear park began in 1992 by the Assabet River Rail Trail Incorporated, a nonprofit organization. The preliminary designs for the trail were presented in a public forum in 1994, and a state study of the ARRT concluded the project was feasible in February 1997. Finally, in 1998, all 5 towns voted to start the first steps of the project. The Marlborough portion of the Assabet River Rail Trail begins off Lincoln Street and continues to head north to Hudson Street. Along the trail, you may pass Sheepfall Brook and observe traditional plant and animal species such as black raspberries, oak trees, red-tailed foxes, woodchucks, porcupines, and squirrels. After you pass Fitchburg Street, the trail is bordered by the athletic fields at Assabet Valley Regional Vocational High School. If one were to walk the entire trail, they would start in Marlborough and end in Acton. In Marlborough, Hudson, and Maynard, the trail runs through lands that are mostly urbanized. In Stowe and Acton, the lands are predominantly rural with more natural resources. The 2 main objectives in creating this trail were, 1, to inventory existing natural resources and identify key flora and fauna along the pedestrian trail, also to identify any habitats supporting rare or endangered species, and 2, to prepare a guide that introduces the community to the diversity of nature in our own backyards. The most significant natural resource along the ARRT is the Assabet River itself. The trail follows the river valley in Hudson, Stowe, and Maynard with many opportunities to walk right alongside the river's edge. When the railroad was originally built in the 1840s and early 1850s, there were no laws protecting wetland areas, allowing them to build so closely to the river. Today they allow the public to have direct access to nature without disturbing sensitive environments. This provides a wonderful opportunity to reconnect with our natural surroundings. The trail can also be enjoyed as an outdoor classroom, whether one is traveling through rural or urbanized stretches of the trail. It is hoped to guide and encourage further investigation by students of all ages. So instead of staying at home this season, grab a friend or a family member and hit the trail to experience some of Marlborough's natural beauty. For the magazine, I'm Melanie Francis.
Next, Rob O'Keefe looks into the invasive species that are troubling the city.
Attention Marlborough residents, you are being invaded by land, by water, by air. It's the attack of the invasive species.
No, these invaders aren't from outer space, but yes, they do come from other countries, China, Australia, and even places more close to home like your backyard. But just because you can find them in your backyard doesn't mean they're supposed to be in your backyard.
What do they want? Where are they from? Where are they going?
Well, Colonel, those are the same questions we asked of 40-year member of the Marlborough Conservation Commission, City Councilor Ed Clancy. With so many plant species in Massachusetts alone, how can we know which plants are truly invasive?
To be considered as invasive, they actually have to fit 4 criteria. Number 1, non-indigenous to Massachusetts. In other words, it was not from Massachusetts. In other words, it was introduced into the state. Number 2 being it has a biological potential for rapid and widespread dispersion and establishment in minimally managed habitats. An area where there is no cutting, there is no application of herbicides, there's no actual removal of root structures and things like that. They have to be, have a biological potential for dispersion over spatial gaps. You might be able to introduce something into your yard, and all of a sudden you find that if it's, you have it over here, next thing you know, you notice it is growing over there. When you have this jump, that means that it can be invasive. So and you didn't move it. It has the biological potential for existing in high numbers. That's one of the crucial things, away from the intensively managed artificial habitats. If you have a tree that has the potential for producing a lot of seeds, this means that it can be actually introduced to another area by means of seeds.
And speaking of seeds, our first fugitive plant on Marlborough's most unwanted list is the Norway maple, a tree that is commonly mistaken for its native cousin, the American sugar maple.
If you take a look at this, just the specimen I brought in, take a look at the number of seeds that we have present on it. These just are numerous. The way to tell the difference between this one here and the the regular sugar maple is that this one here has on the tips, it's very broad. The tip is very broad and it produces numerous seeds. I have an American sugar maple, and as you can see, it's very narrow on the tip. So that's the difference between the two. Those are the trees that we actually saved up on West Main Street when we were widening the street. I was in favor of cutting them down and introducing something which was probably not invasive. And what happened is that they wound up saving them, so they are still there.
Many residents may overlook Japanese knotweed and accept it as a native, probably because it has been around since the 1800s.
As far as I'm concerned, it probably has taken over a lot of the parts of the city. It grows in areas where disturbed areas and they're not well maintained. This is a form of bamboo. This is a bamboo because it does die totally to the surface of the ground and leaves these stems. But the only thing is that normally you think a bamboo has structural strength. This does not have any structural strength, so you wouldn't be able to use it for anything. Many times people have these introduced into their yard. They go out and buy loam, and the loam company comes and delivers the loam, and next thing you know, you have something such as this growing in your yard. But what happens is that this propagates by means of roots. If you were to buy loam, make sure you buy screen loam. This is one that people actually have probably purchased in the garden centers, brought them home, and propagating them in their yard. Everybody's heard of burning bush. They're beautiful in the fall because the bright red coloration that develops on the surface of on the leaves, in the leaves, because of the pigmentation in the leaves. But this is called winged euonymus. I don't know if you can see this on the stem. See, you can see the wings on the edge of the stems. Winged euonymus. And these are invasive. If you get a stand of these will actually creep out You know, in other words, in having a single plant, next thing you know, the whole thing is spreading sideways.
Perhaps the most threatening of all invasives in Marlborough is one that could take out any other plant species if it wanted to, native or invasive alike.
The bittersweet was introduced because of the ability for people to make arched wreaths with them, and these seeds, as you can see right here, this is the fruit of the plant right here, actually develop a yellow and orange coloration in the fall. This is absolutely horrible, what is occurring with this one. This one here is choking trees. It's actually growing up on trees and choking out the trees. It girdles them. It actually wraps around the tree and girdles them. I'll give you an example. This is one that I collected. Now that you can see that came from around a tree. So in other words, this is the base. It's growing up the tree, goes around the tree, and I had to unwrap this from the tree. I'll take a look at this. You know, these are rapidly growing groups that were actually growing together as a vine, one supporting the other. And what happens is that it will take and go up, and it will top growth a tree. It will grow over the top of the tree and cut out the light to the tree in itself and basically kill the tree. This has attached to a mullein plant. This is actually a regular indigenous variety of plant that grows in Massachusetts, but as you can see, the whole thing is just totally grown around this stem. And this is last year's growth on the mullein, so it would not kill it, but take a look at how invasive that thing is. This is, I would probably qualify this as probably one of the most dangerous that we've had in the last few years. Example, if you know, we cut all the trees down along Lake Williams. There was a stand of pines that were in there, and the pines are actually killed because of the invasion of the bittersweet all over the surface of them. When they went in there, they actually grubbed around, removed the stumps of some of the stumps, and actually grubbed around and removed all of the material and ground and chipped up all of the chippings there. They took the larger logs away, but they removed most of the roots from it.
Lake Williams is just one of many waterways and wetlands that have been affected by invasives in Marlborough. Adding to our unwanted list are the following species that prefer a moist environment.
This one here grows in areas in and around wetland areas, primarily in the wetland. This one here is actually beautiful. They've actually been trying to utilize a beetle that would eat the plant itself. I'm not exactly sure where it goes, but the problem is that, say, sometimes you want to introduce something to control something, and that becomes a problem in itself. This is Phragmites, and as you can see, it's quite tall. And actually, this is a shot piece right here because it's early in the summer. By the end of the summer, this thing could get to be about 15 feet tall. I took these out of the corner of the causeway at Fort Meadow. As you can see, if I hold up the end right here, has a very long tuberous root. See the very large, long root with all of the various rootlets coming off of it. Now, this large root has the ability to propagate other plants by taking pieces off of this. If I was to take a piece off of this and plant it in an aquatic environment, because these are considered to be aquatic, they could propagate more and more of these things. Eurasian milfoil is a species that was probably introduced by means of someone carrying it in on a boat, and or it could have been introduced on the feet of a bird. A wading bird might have had some on it.
Plants aren't the only species that are wreaking havoc on Marlboro's natural habitats. A certain tiny animal has found a home in Fort Meadow. Having only been discovered in 2 other places in Massachusetts, the Asian clam has now spread to about 10 waterways in Massachusetts in just a few years.
These are just the shells of this species of clam. This was actually introduced into the United States by means of people who were using these in aquariums. You go down there, it looks just like something you would see on the beach out on the ocean, and it looks just like a clam or a quahog that you would find down on the Cape. One thing that is happening is that these are becoming food for muskrats. These are becoming food for muskrats down in the lake, and there was huge piles around on the lake where the muskrats were actually removing them from the sand on the bottom of the lake and eating them and then putting them in a pile. So you have loads of them just piled up down there. Well, maybe it might be a good thing for the muskrats, but when you get big piles of these and they're taking over, it is not going to be a good thing for the health of the lake.
As you can see by the roots of this invasive species, the roots have already grown deep into the ground. So what can we do to stop the spread of invasive species? And more importantly, why should we even care? If you enjoy boating, kayaking, fishing, or even the occasional stroll through the woods looking for local wildlife, you should be concerned. For example, Phragmites have been known to destroy entire wetland areas by taking over native species such as cattails. While cattails are designed to grow in smaller groups and filter the water, aggressive Phragmites strands can put a stranglehold on a wetland, virtually sucking it dry, leaving native wildlife with no home. If milfoil or Asian clams were able to take over Fort Meadow, boat propellers would be forever a tangled mess, and jet ski intakes would become clogged with Asian clam shells. Who would want to live in a lake that you couldn't swim or boat in? Not many, and that could cause property values to drop in such an area, effectively ruining a human's habitat as well. While officials take action to cut down invasive populations, we can contribute by stopping the propagation of these species. If you take your boat, jet ski, or kayak from lake to lake, it is your job to keep other lakes from becoming infected.
Anything that actually winds up in the water could potentially take weeds out. Most of the weeds are along the weed line, but you also pick them up while you're out in the water. So you can pick them up on the motor itself. They get up into the rungs and into the little crevices here. So that's the boat itself, but the trailer is the main avenue that take the weeds in and out. So what I do is I make sure there's nothing on my license plate. Up underneath, there's some wiring here. I get up under there and check. I have my main supports going across. And this is where you visibly would see most of the weeds. They'd actually accumulate there on the bottom. I actually have several cross members along the way here. So anything that goes in the water, I do a check. And when I pull up out of the lake, I open all my drains and make sure the live well in the front, my live well in the back, which are not as obvious places to have accumulation of weeds or dirt. And I make sure they're drained out. And I do one final check before I pull away. And when I get home, I always rinse my boat down with fresh water.
Sometimes when you go fishing, you might bring some live bait, such as minnows and crawdads or whatever. So if you have a live bait container like this one, you might just want to clean out the inside if it's real dirty like that is. Just wash that out, and sometimes even your tackle might have weeds on it. Caught on a hook, you might want to clean all your tackle off as well.
So the next time you see some purple loosestrife or bittersweet and decide it's beautiful enough to have in your yard, think again. Because if we all do our part by stopping the spread of these killer invaders, the only alien species we'll have to worry about
are the ones with ridiculous breeding signals and frilly silk uniforms. Although it seems the Colonel is taking care of that. For the magazine, I'm Rob O'Keefe.
Finally, we learned to turn your trash into treasure.
As you're driving down Route 20, you may not notice this small sign on the side of the road. So we took a tour of 2 facilities that you need to know more about. Let's start with the We Care facility. When you and your family are putting out the trash at home, ever wonder where it goes? Well, it goes here to be made into a product that is sold around the country. So when you throw away your trash, it doesn't go away. President of the We Care facility here in Marlboro, Chris Ravenscroft, explains.
The We Care facility is a solid waste processing center that is permitted to handle 55,000 tons of municipal solid waste a year. Approximately half of that capacity is dedicated to our host community, the city of Marlboro. And the city does send us about 25,000 tons a year of waste, comprising approximately of 13,000 tons of trash, or MSW, and about 12,000 tons of biosolids, or residuals from the wastewater treatment plants.
So how does this facility work? Trash and waste is brought to We Care and is then sorted. Non-organic waste is then taken to a landfill. Now what you have left is fresh organic waste, which is loaded onto an inclined conveyor and then loaded onto one of the 2 digesters where it is commingled with biosolids.
At the facility, we are combining organic waste, such as paper and food waste and other materials that can decompose, with the sludge in order to create a type 1 product which is permitted for distribution throughout Massachusetts.
2 digesters rotate this mixture as naturally occurring bacteria convert it into compost.
There's actually a recipe that we use to balance the sources of nitrogen, which typically comes from the sludge, and sources of carbon, which comes from the curbside and other outside waste that we take in. So we work that recipe maintaining a certain ratio of carbon to nitrogen and also moisture in order to manufacture in 3 days of fresh raw compost. It is very organic. It's about 70% organic. And as a result, when mixed with marginal soils, sandy soils, or gravel, it will generate a loam type topsoil, which is very fertile and appropriate for growing all kinds of materials, from regular grasses to garden vegetables to window boxes and the like.
A 30,000-foot biofilter is the final step in the process. The biofilter is a 4-foot deep mix of compost and wood chips spread over a network of distribution pipes. This environment allows bugs and microorganisms to consume odor-causing compounds so that the final product is odor-free and fresh. Now, this process is done without you blinking an eye, but you can help this process to run a bit smoother. Recycling and sorting your trash helps this process immensely, and lucky for you, at the top of this facility, there is a residential recycling drop-off that you can utilize for free. Recycling Committee Chairwoman Peggy Ayers met with us to give us a scoop on recycling here in Marlboro.
Anything that you can recycle at curbside, you can recycle here. Plus, we also have some other options that are not available curbside.
The Marlboro Residential Recycling Area allows qualified Marlboro residents the opportunity to recycle waste.
If people do not have curbside recycling, or if they have a lot at their house and they don't want to wait for that every other week, they can come here and use this facility.
There are recycling-only stickers which are free for every Marlboro resident.
All items being recycled should be clean and uncontaminated to allow remanufacture and reuse. Some items accepted are used clothing, food containers, paper and cardboard materials, and used engine oil. Need more information? Well, there's a rubbish and recycling drop-off regulation guide that you can pick up when you come to purchase your recycling sticker. This guide has all the information you will need to jumpstart your recycling habits.
Each of the bins are clearly marked to let you know what is supposed to go inside of them: glass, plastic bottles, tin cans. If it has food in there, that's considered a contaminant.
The hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., and Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m.
For every ton of material that we recycle, that's 1 ton less that we have to have processed, that we pay $100.66 to have that composted. And that does not include our pickup fees. So everything that you recycle makes a huge difference.
Are you looking for more reasons on why recycling is so important? Well, recycling reduces the use of landfills. It protects our health and environment. It conserves our natural resources, saves energy, and saves money. Now, while we were at this drop-off facility here in Marlboro, we pulled over a resident, and he knows exactly why it's so important to recycle.
With everybody being concerned about being green in general, it just follows what the national trend is, and it's good for the environment. Part of being a responsible citizen of the city, to if you can't get it there down by the curb, get it over here and do the right thing for the environment in the city.
Are you still not convinced why recycling is so important to you and your family? Come on down to these facilities. Take a tour at the We Care facility with Chris Ravenscraft. Him and his staff are pleased to give anyone a tour who wants one. Come check out this drop-off facility. Talk with a security guard about which recycling sticker will be right for you. Come make this community a better one. Well, that's going to do it. I'm Kristen Doucette for The Magazine.
That's going to do it for this episode of The Magazine. Thank you for watching, and tune in for a new show next month.